Next, we're going to hear from Sophia Conway, the author of Someday, Somewhere Beautiful. Sophia's poems explore the themes of miscarriage, pregnancy, and motherhood in a fierce but vulnerable way. It's an intimate and often difficult moment when someone shares about great loss, especially the loss of a child. However, Sophia is passionate about starting conversations surrounding the pain of miscarriage and the challenges of motherhood.
The writing of this collection of poems began as a way of processing her own grief and journey to motherhood. But Sophia has since come to use her art and platform to encourage and advocate for other women who have experienced similar grief. Sophia has even been invited into conversations with Island Health to help improve care offered to women walking through pregnancy loss.
It's Sophia's hope that this evening would open up space to talk about these experiences. She hopes that exhibiting her art makes people feel less alone and destigmatizes some of the topics discussed in her poetry.
That's why we're pleased to be able to hear some of her story and art directly from her this evening. So everybody, please welcome with us Sophia Conway.
I feel very calm this evening, which I wasn't expecting, so I must be forgetting something somewhere. Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. It's surreal to be here at this book launch. I started writing these poems about 3 years ago amid our journey to parenthood, which included 2 challenging pregnancies, a miscarriage, and finally the arrival of our son, as Thomas and Ellie mentioned. Poetry was an escape for me, a way of turning my grief into something a little bit more productive, a way to process my emotions and experiences. Once I had written a solid collection of poems, I wondered what I could do with them. I wanted to put my work out into the world hoping it would find the right people, mothers who might be going through what I was going through. Grief is a heavy burden to carry and motherhood can be incredibly isolating. So I hope my experience told through poetry would help others feel less alone or just encouraged while dealing with similar challenges. And for those on the outskirts, it's an insight into what mothers may be going through, and I hope it helps them, gives them sort of greater compassion and better understanding as well. And on a more personal level, of course, this book is many things to me. It's a diary of a season of my life, a history of how our little family came about, a map of all the places my husband has faithfully journeyed with me through, a memory capsule of our first child, a love letter to our son, who, yeah, it's worth it. You certainly heard him, and you will probably hear from him again this evening. But it puts me in a vulnerable situation, bearing my heart in this way on these pages. As terrifying as it is, I wanted to be honest with the world and hope it meets me with compassion. And I hope you too won't judge me by my lowest moments, because I'm just very honest. And if I mention anything about my marriage, it was with the approval of my husband. Just a heads up. Tonight I'm going to share a few selected poems from the book that I hope encapsulate it as a whole. I was a bit of a theater kid growing up, but this work has been more challenging for me to perform because it's very personal and deeply emotional still sometimes. I also realized I write in long sentences, which is fine when you're reading them quietly, but once you start saying them out loud, I quickly run out of breath. So I'll do my best, but you're forewarned that caffeine, anxiety, and asthma do not mix. So we'll see how we go. No promises. I didn't want to jump straight into the emotional deep end, so I'm skipping ahead a little in the book and then I'll backtrack. This poem is about being impatient for something we desperately want, inspired by the anxious waiting time I experienced before and during each pregnancy. And if it sounds familiar to you, that's because Love is Moving magazine actually published it last year, for anyone who's following along my publishing journey. They chose me for their November 2024 Artist Spotlight, which I'm incredibly grateful for. They've actually been very supportive of my poetry. And this poem called Dreams Like Yeats, named after W.B. Yeats, who's an Irishman, of course, one of my favorite poets and I definitely recommend you check him out. I quote him a little bit in this. So this is Dreams Like Yates. Just wait. I have spread my dreams, W.B. Yeats utters. Tread softly, walk carefully, and guard each step ahead. I utter the same words to this house. Our home becomes a church shadow, as each day turns over light and day falling and rising around as I haunt the threshold here. The hopes and requests I murmur fuse with the old wood and new paint becoming one. A house of many dreams and soon a life of many colors if I have my way. I hear each desire whispered back in the stillness of the endless nights, echoes and mutterings, a flurry of prayers clutching at meditations. This home filled with wishes deeper than a wishing well, my constant pleading becomes this shrine's endless bell. So the first chapter of these poems in this book is dedicated to the baby that we lost, whom we named Enda. This next poem is one closest to my heart. Many of the poems use metaphors and juxtapositions, but this one speaks very plainly and honestly of my experience. My experience in having a miscarriage followed by an emergency D&C surgery is that if you request your baby's remains returned to you after the surgery, so you can arrange the burial yourself, the remains will be returned to you in a plastic container, wrapped in a plastic bag, with words like biological waste and hazardous printed all over it. It was devastating to me to hold my baby for the first time in this way. I know Thomas and Ellie kind of mentioned this a little bit in the introduction, but I have in the last few months been corresponding with Island Health and the hospital to see if there's a way to improve the packaging to make it more respectful. I'm grateful that they're willing to have this conversation with me and are open to making changes. We've had several Zoom meetings already, but that's a conversation that's still ongoing, so no changes yet. But I didn't want to just sit and complain about my experiences, but work towards improving it for future women. Some people that I've spoken to who have read this next poem already are shocked about the experience that I wrote, so I just wanted to share that this evening so people will know that there's going to be changes happening soon, Lord willing. So that is some context for this next poem entitled Sparrow Fly. Oh my goodness, okay. I talk a lot already, but this feels like a lot. Savagely, they gave you to me in a yellow Tupperware box, wrapped in a plastic bag stained with words like hazardous and biological waste. I could have burned the hospital down in my inner rage that they would place this great treasure in such a lowly space, while realizing the grief that my arms had ached to hold you, but not like this. Oh, I had never held plastic so tenderly. I held my own heart that day and wished the world would fall away, our life a fable of one can hope and love too much too soon. Yellow box on the shelf next to the aloe until it was time to let go. We named you in low murmurs that night, and our little bird had taken flight. The footnote to this poem, which I'll read out to you, says, with Irish origins, Enda derives from the old Gaelic phrase Ein Gala, meaning like a bird, suggesting freedom of spirit. This next poem is called Runaways, and that's exactly how we felt when my husband and I loaded up the car to drive from here to Winnipeg. We had booked 3 weeks off work to have a little baby Moon and tick some things off our Canadian bucket list before becoming parents. We lost baby Enda unexpectedly just a few weeks before we were supposed to leave, but still decided to go on our trip, this time with a different focus. From one last hurrah to a time for us to process our loss privately, leave our little grief bubble and reconnect as a couple. We spent our days driving, eating, sightseeing, praying, reflecting, and reading through the book of Proverbs, and our nights sleeping on an air mattress in the back of our car underneath an amazing prairie sky full of the brightest stars you'll ever see. It was an amazingly healing time for us, emotionally and spiritually, and I'm very grateful that we did it. And and that this next poem speaks to those experiences. It's called Runaways. The grief weighs heavily, smothers the air and laments in the wind, so we run. Pack the car with camping gear and drive to the ferryman, through Whistler, Jasper, Banff, Calgary, and beyond. Over mountains and between bared grain stalks we drive and sleep enshrined in colder nights and drink deeply of the winter sun. Sadness does not follow us, but the questions do. I hear them echo in the mud behind each tire mark and curve. Why us? Why now? Why this? On our return, we still have no answers, but a newfound peace, the kind that comes in waves, promising something hazy in the morning light. I can't quite pin it yet, but I can be patient. The little white crib gets washed with tears and packed away for a future day, another hope, a different child.